My name is Mike Spears. I'm running for U.S. Senate. I'm running as an independent, but my views are generally conservative. I believe in limited constitutional government, fiscal reform, and the free market. I'm an entrepreneur and small business owner, not a politician. I entered this race to restore this country, to restore this nation to its founding principles, to restore fidelity to the Constitution, and to restore the voice of the people to Washington. I believe we have lost our way. There was a time I'd call myself a Republican. Instead, today, I like to say that I'm a recovering Republican. Sort of reminds me of when your dog runs away, right? At first, you're brokenhearted, and then every day in the afternoon, you sit out on your porch waiting for him to run back and jump into your arms. One day, I hope the Republican Party finds its way back home. I think one of the most important issues that Americans are concerned about right now are jobs and the economy. I think everybody's really feeling the heat of this recession. And in my opinion, the enemy is uncertainty. Right now, because of that uncertainty, there's about $8 trillion sitting on the sidelines, $2 trillion in big corporate cash just sitting there because they're not really sure what the economy is going to do. And then there's another $6 trillion of personal savings that people are sitting on and they're afraid to spend. Think about it this way, from a personal perspective. Your husband walks home, walks through the door, tells you, honey, I got word at the office today that they may be cutting my pay and some people are going to be laid off. Immediately what happens? Imagine that happens in your household. Immediately, the first thing you start thinking is, wow, what do we do? Okay, we stop spending on things that are not necessities. We start saving more money where we can because we're seriously not sure what's going to happen. Well, this is what uncertainty does, is it locks people up, it locks their money up, and so nothing happens. So the economy right now is just dead, and that's really what's happening, is it's staggering. And to make matters worse is that people are expecting their taxes to go up. People are expecting more regulations, for instance, in healthcare. There's excessive spending in Washington. They continue to spend. They do not want to cut spending. They do not want to shrink the size of government. TARP, stimulus, bailout, these are all government fiddling in the marketplace. And all they've done is moved money around in the markets. They haven't really changed the economics in the marketplace. And all this movement and fiddling by the government is really a poison in the economy. So what needs to happen? And that's the question. Everybody complains about the economy, what the problem is. Well, here's what, it's simple. We don't need a big plan. We don't need some master economic stimulus plan. What we need are simple, fundamental changes, actually moving government out of the marketplace. We need lower taxes. And in tandem with lower taxes, we have to have a cut in spending. Because right now there's a lot of talk about how lowering or allowing the Bush tax credits to expire are going to help the deficit. And they say that if we allow them to continue, they renew them, it's going to increase the deficit. Of course it's going to increase the deficit if we don't cut spending. But it's going to increase the deficit also if the economy continues to be stagnant. So if we lower taxes and cut spending and the economy catches fire, then we have increased revenues. So this is where I think we need to head. This is where our country needs to go. And in addition to that, we need less regulation. We need to allow entrepreneurs and small business people do what they do. These are the people that create jobs. And then we just need government to get out of the way. Well, right now, this country is in a recession. Okay? To make matters worse for Louisiana, this administration has executed a moratorium, a drilling moratorium on deep water drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, it's really difficult to understand this because you have to understand the safety record. The safety record has been great overall. Out of all the wells, there's only been a few accidents in the Gulf of Mexico. This one probably being the most disastrous because people lost their lives. And we had this terrible oil spill for months. So it's it's really quite a tragedy, but it's not nearly the tragedy that the economic tragedy that it is here for Louisiana. And I still don't understand it, because it's essentially a shutdown of an industry. While it's deep water drilling, the shallow water drilling permits, there's pretty much a de facto moratorium on those, because they're not being issued. If they are, they're being issued at a fraction of what they normally are issued. So I'm completely against this moratorium. And in my opinion, I always try to draw things back to a central issue or problem that's caused. And really what it is it's a states' right issue. The federal government should not have so much power that they can shut down the economy of an entire state. And that's exactly what this moratorium has done. It's impacted this economy. And Louisiana was doing very well throughout this recession. We were holding our own. But what we have now is essentially an economy that's shut down. And our politicians in Washington, my two primary rivals, they paraded up and down the coast as long as this oil was flowing into the Gulf of Mexico. But there's people still down on the coast who are suffering, who are not getting checks from BP for their loss of business. There is what seems like absolute chaos down there now. But since the cameras are gone, you don't see hide nor hair of either of these two rivals. These two people who were parading up and down the coast, getting photo ops at every turn. So it's really a political quagmire, in my opinion. And the bottom line is the federal government should not have the ability to shut down an entire industry. And one more point, this is something that nobody's talking about in terms of this moratorium. So we have in the oil and gas industry this tragedy, this terrible accident, right? Not much different than a coal mine accident, right? An explosion, miners get trapped in there, and in many of these accidents, these people die. It's tragic, but those industries are not shut down. The coal mine industry was never shut down. So why is that? Why the oil and gas industry shut down and not the coal industry shut down? Well, let me just put it this way. Unions. The oil and gas industry is not a union industry. The coal mining industry is a union industry. And the administration has received a tremendous amount of financial and other support from big unions. TARP, bailouts, stimulus, cash for clunkers. My business partner always told me, he says, Mike, follow the money and you will discover things, you will discover the truth. And so if you follow in those programs the money, and you'll see that that money never really gets down into the small business community. It never gets down to the people. It essentially amounts to corporate welfare. It essentially amounts to paying back unions for their support of the Obama administration. These are essentially trillions of dollars that went to other sources outside of the American people. You got to think, when it comes to stimulating the economy, let's look at $1 trillion stimulus. When it comes to stimulating the economy, who is the economy? 50% of jobs are created by small businesses. 80%, up to 80% of new jobs are created by small businesses. And almost all of the innovation in this country comes from small businesses. That stimulus package, most of it went to government projects, university projects. It went to projects that were essentially non-productive or unproductive. They did not produce sustainable jobs. What they did was they funded a government project or some project in a big corporation, and that project, they spent the money, everything was gone. So any jobs that were created were once again lost. So if you really want to stimulate the economy in terms of a stimulus, you got to get that money down to the small businesses. I don't believe in stimuluses, though. I believe if you allow small businesses and entrepreneurs to do what they do best, and you give them an environment, you create an environment where the government's not interfering, and you create an environment where their taxes are low, and you create an environment where you're not taxing investment, then I think that creates an environment where they can be incredibly productive, and this is where they excel. For instance, you put a runner on a track, and you snap that gun, and they're off. On that track is where they perform. And what we need to do as the government needs to just get out of the way and allow that condition, that situation to be perfectly conducive for our small business people and the entrepreneurs that make this great country great.